I stood frozen on the edge of the woods, heart pounding as the wail echoed through the trees. It was a sound like nothing I'd ever heard before, pure sorrow and desperation. My friends and I had heard the legend of the Wailing Woman, but we never believed it was true. That night changed everything. Earlier that evening, we had decided to camp near the old cemetery on a dare. It was supposed to be a thrill, a chance to prove we weren't scared of some old ghost story. We set up our tents and built a campfire, laughing and joking to keep the fear at bay. As the night wore on, the conversation turned to the legend. Supposedly, a woman had lost her child in these woods decades ago and died searching for him. Ever since, her spirit wandered the forest, wailing in grief. Just as Mark was recounting the story, the wind whispered through the trees, growing louder and more distinct. The wail, a mournful, heart-wrenching cry, cut through the night. "Did you hear that?" I asked. My friends fell silent, their faces pale. "It's just the wind," Lisa said, though she didn't sound convinced. But the wail came again, closer this time. We exchanged terrified glances, and against my better judgment, I grabbed my flashlight and headed toward the sound. My friends followed reluctantly, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The wail led us deeper into the woods, past the old cemetery and toward a small clearing. There, in the moonlight, I saw her, a ghostly figure in a tattered white dress, her long hair flowing as if caught in an invisible breeze. She was hunched over, her face hidden, wailing in anguish. We stood there, too scared to move, as the Wailing Woman continued her mournful cries. I felt a wave of sadness wash over me, a deep, aching sorrow that seemed to come from the very ground beneath my feet. Suddenly she stopped and looked up, her eyes locking onto mine. They were filled with such pain and longing that I couldn't look away. Slowly, she raised a hand and pointed to the ground near my feet. I looked down and saw a small, weathered gravestone, half buried in the earth. The name and dates were barely legible, but I could make out the word child and the year 1923. Realization hit me like a punch to the gut. This was her child's grave, lost and forgotten in the woods. She had been searching all this time, unable to find peace. With a trembling hand, I reached down and cleared the dirt away from the gravestone. As I did, the wailing softened, turning into a quiet, almost thankful whisper. When I looked up, the Wailing Woman was gone. We returned to our campsite in stunned silence, the weight of what we had experienced hanging heavily in the air. The legend was true, and we had helped a lost soul find her way.